Hey guys! Okay, so it's been a minute since I filmed. Also, I'm sorry if the audio is weird, but I'm in my kitchen and it's kind of echoey in here for whatever reason. Um, but I wanted to film a video for you. I've been out of the country. I went to Australia and then this tiny island called Lord Howe Island on like a family vacation trip for Christmas. And so I was gone, but I did a lot of reading while I was gone, and I want to catch you up on what I've read. So this is kind of a December wrap up. I guess this is a December wrap up. I'll put the books up here because I don't have them with me at this moment. So they're in the other room, and I don't want to walk into the other room right now. If that doesn't tell you how lazy I am, I don't know. Okay. So for the month of December, the first book I read was Paddle Your Own Canoe by Nick Offerman. This is another one of his memoirs, and I kind of decided that after reading this, I feel like once you've read one of his memoirs, you've kind of read all of them, but he's also really funny, so I wouldn't discourage anyone from reading multiple memoirs. I've read The Greatest Love Story Ever Told and Paddle Your Own Canoe, so that's only two, so I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think he has at least 3 or 4. I'm not sure. But yeah, I liked it. It's funny because he's a comedian and he's a good writer. Like, he really does know how to write. But a lot of the stories were things I'd already heard because I've like watched interviews of him, or I've heard him talk, or I've read other stuff by him. So the actual like stories and stuff weren't that new to me, was my only complaint. But other than that, I really liked it. Then I read If He Hollers, Let Him Go by Chester Himes, which is a book I'd never heard of before, but I read it for my, LA literature class. And it's essentially about an African American man in, I think, the 40s in LA, kind of like dealing with life, and everything like really pisses him off, which like is valid. Like, there's lots of like, I guess what we'd call now like microaggressions. And so he's just like pissed off throughout the novel, like hates all white people. Well, maybe not all, but most white people, and is like seriously thinking about murdering one of them. And so it's a lot of his like angst-filled like sadness, and it's really like dark, and not in like a positive way, because I think a lot of books are really dark, but they also like shed a lot of light on subjects that I might not have heard of before, things like that. But this one, I don't know. I really wasn't a big fan. I felt like it was just, I think he was trying really hard to prove a point, and I think he proved that point within like the first paragraph, and then the rest of the novel was unnecessary. That's how I felt about it. Yeah, I think there are better books that deal with the same themes. Yeah. Okay, then I read Norwegian Wood, which I have done a review of. Please go watch that. I really loved Norwegian Wood. I did. I really liked it. I'm trying to think of how to summarize it. It's about a guy going through, like, it's kind of a coming of age novel about a guy who many of the people around him commit suicide, which isn't a spoiler, it happens very early on. And so it's a lot of him coping with all of that in various different ways through women and through, I don't know, trying to navigate that, I guess. And it's sad, and it's really well written, and it's very different than other Haruki Murakami stuff, because he usually is a lot more into like magical realism and that kind of thing, and this novel doesn't really have a lot of that, but it's really well written, and it's one of his most famous works for good reason, so I highly recommend that. Then I read Fox 8 by George Saunders. Last year, it's 2019 now. Earlier last year, I read The Brief Frightening Reign of Phil by George Saunders, which I really, really liked, and since then have been wanting to read more Saunders. So I read Fox 8, which is like a really short book about a fox, and it's like essentially like told from the fox's perspective about like humans and like the way that we treat the environment and things like that. So it's essentially like an environmentalist kind of essay, I guess, but there's like cute illustrations and stuff. I'll insert pictures if I can find them. But yeah, and I liked it. It's not my favorite work of his so far, but I'm planning on reading more. I just bought Lincoln in the Bardo, which is very famous. Um, so we'll see if that is better. But I feel like all of his work that I've read, at least, is all very different. Like a lot of, like in themes, subject matter, all of it. And I'm excited to read more of him. Yeah. Um, Next, I read Catcher in the Rye, which was my second time reading it. After I found out I got into college, I like immediately picked this up. Um, it is a book that like, or I guess this is my third time reading it because I read it once when I was in like sixth grade. No, seventh grade. I couldn't really understand it, but I read it in like a day, and after came away from it saying like this book is awful, like this character just complains a lot. I don't know why people like this book. Like that was the way I felt about it. Um, the second time I read it was in ninth grade for class, and I loved it. And I think understanding it and annotating it and like working through it with a whole class and a teacher and everything like really helped me understand Holden's character a lot more, and so I think I like really grew to have like a soft spot for him, and so he became one of my favorite characters instead of like one of my least favorite characters. And then yeah, and so then I reread it for the third time in December, and I loved it again. It really like it was a lot easier to read this time because I'm older now. So I got through it really quickly, but it's just it's sad but it's sweet, and like it's the kind of book that like brings me back to a different place in my life, and like it's a book that I want to keep rereading throughout my life because I really enjoy it and I love Holden's character and I like growing up with him, I guess. I'm planning on doing a video just about Catcher in the Rye because I have a lot of feelings about it. Let me know if you want to hear more about my feelings about Catcher in the Rye. Leave them in the comments. Um, okay, then I read Sabines Notebook, which is the second book in the Griffin and Sabine series that my aunt had told me about. They're like these, they're all told in, I think it's epistolary is the word. They're all told in letters and postcards between like two sort of lovers, but then Griffin is real, but we're not sure if the person he's been talking to, Sabine, is actually a real person or just a figment of his imagination he's been writing to himself. So that's kind of what the second one deals with. I didn't like it as much as the first, but I do want to finish the series, so I'll probably read the next one. But they're really easy to read. They're really quick to get through. Okay, then I read Jurassic Park, which I loved Jurassic Park. I'm going to do a review of this too because I mean, it's Jurassic Park, and this isn't news, but it's fantastic. I was reading this while I was on this tiny little, like, tropical island. Like, there were, like, prehistoric-looking bugs everywhere, and, like, the trees were huge, and it felt really jungly, which I think just enhanced the whole experience of reading it. And it's just incredible. It's nothing like the movie either, so if you've seen the movie, which I assume you have, because everyone's seen Jurassic Park, or if not the old ones, Jurassic World, like the new ones, you've at least seen one of them. And I think they're so different, and I highly recommend reading it also. Even if you have seen it already, like go read the books, then rewatch the movies. That's what I did. Loved it. Michael Crichton is a great writer. Leave me some more recommendations of other Michael Crichton books to read because I don't know where to go from here. But Jurassic Park, I'm not gonna like give you a summary because I assume you know what it's about, but it's really well written. It's like the pacing is what's so good, I think. He's so fantastic at like keeping you into it and making you keep wanting to flip the pages. And I'm often a reader who will like check every so often like how many pages I have left and like sometimes even like calculate it and like find out how long it's going to take me to finish a book, that kind of thing. But this was one of the few books where I haven't looked to see how many pages were in the whole thing until I got to that page because I was so immersed in the story. Yeah, I just have nothing but good things to say about it. I loved it. There is one little girl character who I absolutely hate. She's the worst. But she's intentionally written to be like this awful character. And I think it does come from a very like white man perspective, which you can tell a lot in the language and in that like the female paleontologist is like not that big a part of the book, but is a much larger part of the movie. And I think that's because of his gender bias and stuff. But yeah, overall, really well written. Highly recommend. Okay, then I read Purple Hibiscus. Oh, this is also a beautiful book. I had a really good reading month in December, I'm just realizing. Purple Hibiscus is a book about, written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I'd only read, I think, her like feminist manifestos, but I hadn't read any of her actual novels, which is what she's more famous for. But this is about a young girl growing up in Nigeria. And the dad is like abusive and extremely Catholic. So it deals with a lot of like really intense religious views. And those views obviously like come from colonialism and all of that. And so it deals with like a really difficult past in this country. And it's just such a fascinating look at the way that colonialism has shaped a nation and has shaped this father, this character. And she's so good at showing you all of that in very few words. She's kind of a Hemingway in that, I feel like. Though I don't really like comparing her to Hemingway because they're nothing alike. But yeah, it's beautifully written. It's so like, there's so much love in it, I think is what I loved so much about it, is that every character is written with grace. Every line is beautiful, and you can tell that it comes from a place of love, even when dealing with these really, really hard subjects. And it helps make it not as difficult of a novel to read, I guess, because the subject matter is so dark. But all that love, like, gives it a more positive, optimistic view. So yeah, I should probably do a review of that, because I have way more to say, but I don't have time. Okay, and then I think that's it, actually. So I read quite a few books in December. For me, it feels like a lot. I was kind of sad because I missed my my reading goal. My reading goal for 2018 was 50 books. I talk about this in my like reading goals video. Go watch that if you want to know more about it. My reading goal was 50 though, and at this point, like in December, I had like 90 books, and so I was really hoping I would get to 100 just to be able to like completely double it, but I think I got to like 97. So that was a little sad, but oh well, I tried. I also just finished a couple more books that I'm really excited to talk about, so please keep checking in. I will have more videos for you soon. I'm sorry I haven't been posting as much, but I've been at home and in school and everything, life. You know how it is. I'll be back though, I promise. I have a lot more coming. Thank you so much for watching. I've had a couple people like reach out to me lately to tell me they like my videos, and it means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to know that I'm not just talking to myself now, that there are people that are actually watching these videos. Feels kind of cool. So yeah, thank you so much. Bye.